Hello and welcome to Major Talk here with Pinnacle. It is the second men's golfing major of the year. And you know what? Go back, have a little listen to the last one, see how we got on. Bryan Nicholson, Sophie Walker with me, James Gregg here once again for, well, this fantastic US PGA championship that is set up once again very nicely. Lots of talking points. And on a really good golf course as well at Oak Hill Country Club, which is in New York. So that's a good golf course. That really, really big fan of it. Anyway, here we are. We're going to get straight into it, and we're going to talk all about this second major of the year. Of course, the last one won by Jon Rahm. We had the surprise of Brooks Koepka leading for much of the Masters tournament at Augusta National just last month. Sophie and Bryan, you both been writing articles for Pinnacle.com as well on the betting resources pages, which we'll obviously get into and talk all about. I don't really know where to start. I think last time we talked all about the favourites. This time we'll go something a little bit different. I've mentioned the golf course twice, I think, there in that little intro, so we might as well go for that there. It's been played there before, the US PGA Championship. But unfortunately, for those bettors who are listening, we don't have the experience of seeing this golf course all the time, year in, year out. So it can change. The conditions may well change. There will have been tweaks to the layout as well. But from what we know about Oak Hill, who kind of suits it and what are we looking for around that particular golf course and the way that the USGA set up their golf courses for this particular major? We'll start with Bryan.
Yeah, so it's a course that I don't really know at all. So what I generally do then is first thing I would do is I look at any kind of recent renewals. So the 2013 PGA Championship, obviously, and just one quick look at that leaderboard, and you can see like the standout team straight away. You've got players like David Toms, Zach Johnson, Steve Stricker was up there. Obviously, Jason Duffner won the event. Jim Furyk was there. So it's kind of pointing out accuracy straight away, driving accuracy and keeping the ball in play. Although there has been tweaks to the course, as you mentioned there earlier. I think it's playing about 250 yards longer now. Fairways will be a little bit wider. They've trimmed back some of the trees and stuff like that. And but basically, that's a standout team straight away. And from other research that I was doing, basically it's all about ball striking. So ball striking is like an amalgamation of total drive and greens in regulation. And if you look at, there's an actual ball striking stat on the PGA Tour website, and 3 of the top 4 there are Rahm, Cantlay, and Scheffler. So you're looking at the top of the market again straight away. And I don't know, have you seen Oak Hill? Have you played it even?
No, I've not. I'm a massive Donald Ross fan. Inverness, where the Solheim Cup was, that was a Donald Ross, and I would go along with that theory of PGAs do normally suit longer hitters. The last like 10 winners have all averaged 7 winners have all averaged over 300 yards, but it'll be a course which a lot of players will enjoy playing. So there was a player that played in that Solheim, Bronte Law, and she was like, I love this place. She doesn't hit it very far. So it will appeal to a lot of players. However, this par 70, like pushing 7,500 yards, I think you still do have to look to the long hitters. I think the PGA didn't like the fact that Jason Duffner was winning their events. And if you've noticed since then, there's been that trend of like real bombers and Americans as well.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to look at as well, but I don't know the course itself. I like to look at kind of quotes from players or just what they're saying about the course. And I think McDowell in 2013, he was posting pictures of rough, just huge rough, and he was literally just saying stay out. Rory was saying you have to drive the ball brilliantly. I think he shot a 67 in practice or something. He was saying you just need to drive it brilliantly. So total driving is accuracy and length combined. So again, total driving and ball striking are the 2 kind of premiums that I've marked for this week, and I've been running the numbers on that and the models and stuff, and I have a few that came to mind through that. So that's what we'll be looking at here.
Well, traditionally, we obviously would be looking at favourites and then also trying to work out who are the straighter hitters and driving distance and strokes gained off the tee and that kind of thing. We did this for the Masters, where we basically looked at Jon Rahm, Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, who are the top 3 golfers in the world, the top 3 golfers with our odds on Pinnacle. And when you say drivers of the golf ball, you think Rahm, you think McIlroy, and to an extent you think Scheffler, although I'm not too sure yet. I'm still not sold completely by Scheffler on these brutal USGA layouts. Sophie raises her eyebrows at that. So that,
I got some stats here. Yeah, that might change your mind.
we'll try and disabuse me of that notion then, because I'm thinking Rahm because he is the best driver of the golf ball when he's on. Or I was watching the Wells Fargo Championship at Quail Hollow, which is again a golf course that traditionally requires straightness off the tee if you're going to do well. McIlroy's won 3 times at Quail Hollow. However, last week in his most recent performance, not too great heading into that. Maybe he's going to fine tune that and sort that out before the US PGA Championship, you'd have thought. So further afield, obviously, there's plenty of good drivers of the golf ball. But Bryan, I'm looking at that top 3 because we wax lyrical about those 3 headed towards Augusta. So what are the stats?
Yeah, so funny enough, Rory is the one that's actually not standing out in any of those stats compartments in recent times. So I've got him here, and the significant stats that I'm putting to key metrics, I call them. He's 13th in strokes gained approach, and that's kind of the only one that's standing out for him. Whereas if you look at Scheffler and all the ones I mentioned, so Scheffler is actually 3rd in total driving. He's actually 1st in ball striking, which I said earlier was total driving and greens and regulation combined. He's 5th in strokes gained approach. And another stat actually I'm looking at this week is bogey avoidance. So he's 1st in bogey avoidance as well. So I don't know what the weather's going to be like. They're saying, in the course, it's a different time of year than when it was played in 2013. And they're talking about it could be bad conditions. It's much colder, and the wind could be coming in, rain or whatever. So we don't know what that's going to be like yet. But bogey avoidance, I think, is going to come into play. And if you look at Rahm, then he's 10th in total driving, 4th in ball striking, 3rd in strokes gained approach, and 2nd in bogey avoidance. So Scheffler and Rahm are absolutely standing out ahead of the whole field here, including ahead of Rory as well. So they would be the front 2 on the market for me. Yeah.
Based on that, Sophie, you thinking kind of the same thing? I mean, is it all about that? Is that the key stat that we're trying to unlock here?
Well, I've gone Scheffler above Rahm just because I think it's hard to go back to back. And also what you were saying, Bryan, about the shots gained tee to green. So Scott is number 1 and Jon Rahm's number 2. But Scheffler is nearly half a shot better than him. So he's gaining like 1.5, 2 shots a tournament on Jon Rahm from that stat. He's the best par 4 player on tour. And there's only 2 par 5s this week. So there's going to be loads of par 4s. I really like Scheffler out of those 3, out of our top 3. Last week, last time we did it, it was like, right, each of us have one. I still do think that those top 3 are standout performers. And I actually think we get lost sometimes in the middle events in between majors. I think Brooks Koepka really did show us that at the Masters, that there are some guys that raise their game when it counts. And I think sometimes we can discount Rory because of the Masters, because of what it is to him. It's the Grand Slam. And we might be able to say the same for Jordan Spieth this time round. But with those 3, they are by far the best golfers in the world. And I would be looking to put both of them as favourites. But the good news is you then get a little bit of value going down, because all the bookmakers think the same as well. So I think we should go a little bit further down, because I'm sure you'll agree, Bryan, there's some standouts in the others to watch, isn't there?
I call it, tier 2 and tier 3. The markets are usually where I focus on to try and get a bit of value. Yeah. So, and actually, you mentioned Spieth there. I know he's pulled out with the Byron Nelson with a wrist injury or something, but he was actually big time on my radar for this one. Again, the stats wouldn't show in terms of driving and that, but just watching him at the RBC Heritage, he was driving it brilliantly, and obviously that's like the tightest course on tour. And he was also being very strategic. So he was using less than driver where needed and whatever. And I didn't really associate that with speed, but when I was watching him there, I was like, he's going to be a great fit for the PGA Championship, the way he's playing this course. But who knows with the wrist injury now. But I'm thinking, what they say, beware the injured golfer and all that. And he's going to drift because of all this. He's actually going to drift out a few points. So he might be worth getting on next week.
Currently 23 on Pinnacle. So that's
probably going to drift. Yeah.
That is drifting. That is definitely drifting. So definitely keep an eye on that. And also try and read a little bit of press to see how that wrist injury is, certainly. So Sophie mentioned, obviously, the fact that the live golfers have the ability to raise their game when they really want to. Jordan Spieth is certainly one of those players. Obviously, Koepka demonstrated that from a live perspective last time round. Looking a little further afield, a player who we've not seen raise his game at a major championship yet, but is a serial winner at the moment in the last 12 months or so, is Tony Finau. I think that, we've always waxed lyrical about his driving. He's tightened up his general game, his approach play. I'd say even his short game is looking in finer touch. Is this a man that is sneaking under the radar? Bearing in mind, he won so impressively at the Mexico Open at Vedanta. He won the Houston Open earlier on in the season as well on the PGA Tour. He won back-to-back tournaments right at the end of the season on the PGA Tour last year and strung off some really good, solid performances. Is this going to be his sort of week? Sophie, I know that you're a big Tony Finau fan. Is this the sort of man that you'd be looking at? He's gonna win a major, isn't he, Tony Finau? And it might as well be this one.
More than one. More than one.
Yeah. Nice guys don't always win, and that is pretty much what we said about Tony Finau for 5 years. They
win in the end. They win in the end.
Yes, exactly. We can certainly say that now, Brian, can't we? This is a guy that averages over that 300-yard mark. I mentioned 7 of the last 7 winners of this event have been Americans. He's up to 11th in the world thanks to those 4 wins that you were saying there, James. And for me, as a tour professional, we all know we can do it, right? I can do it. But can you do it when it really counts? Can you get over that finish line? And he can now. And that is that for you, standing on that first tee, knowing, well, do you know what, John Rahm, you won the Masters a couple of weeks ago. And okay, it was a smaller event on the PGA Tour, but I really did stand toe-to-toe with you and take you out. He's also got, Finau doesn't look like he wants it as much as other people. That's why Rory didn't win the Masters. It's not because of his golf ability. It's because he wants it too much. He needs it. Finau doesn't strike you as that type of character. So now he knows he can lift a trophy. I think that persona of Mr. Nice Guy can carry him through. His approach play this year has improved dramatically. And on a Donald Ross course, that is a key stat. So I have actually put him, I know he's not in the Pinnacle betting as a favourite in those top 3, but I put him at number 4 because of what we've seen in this last 12 months. And we would not be saying that about Tony Finau 12 months ago. This guy has gone up a tier, like Brian was saying. And I think we really do need to look close at him for all the majors this year now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's 29.4. He's arguably the best value in the field. So he's like a tier 2 player that I was kind of talking about. And it used to drive me mad when people were on Twitter talking about Finau, he can't finish, he can't close. And I'm just shouting, it's just variance. It's literally just variance. Like there's 3, 4, 5 guys down the stretch all within 1 and 2 shots. And it just didn't work out for him. And basically, so there's a stat called expected wins or something, and his expected wins was 4.4 or something like that, and he had won 1 at the time, and now he's won 6, and it's only about 18 months later or something. And like Sophie said, Sophie, you mentioned the approach stats there. Yeah, he's 2nd in approach, 3rd in strokes gained tee to green. Obviously, he won a couple of events ago. Actually, I put his numbers through my 2 models. So progressive form, which is a huge one. So you're not just looking at current form when you're looking at the golfers, you're looking at guys who are trending in the right direction. So he's actually 9.53 on my models for the progressive form rating, and his course fit is 9.22. So if you add the 2 of them together and average them, I haven't done it for the whole field or anything, but he'd be possibly number 1 if you put those 2 together. And He's if you just throw in a few more stats there, he's 19th in proximity, he's 10th in ball striking, 10th in bogey avoidance. And here's an interesting one actually, is he's 18th in sand saves. And I've actually just the visuals, I've watched Tony take a lot of shots out of the bunker, and he looks to be a very good bunker player. And these greens, so the Donald Ross greens, are all elevated, protected by really deep bunkers this week, and they're kind of sloping greens from back to front. So I think actually a good kind of like sand saves will come into play this week as well. So that's just another one to tick the box for Tony. And as I said, I think he's going to be a multiple major winner. I think he's cut out for majors. He's made for majors basically. So
you're
maybe the best
right.
bet for me this week. Yeah,
I think and those odds on Pinnacle, like you say, are absolutely
30
awesome.
odd.
Yeah, really, really good.
Brian, here's one for you. We're talking about people trending. I've got Xander Schauffele up next, just because talking about Donald Ross favourites. This guy is an absolute machine around the Tour Championship, which is Eastlake. He's had 5 top 5s in a row around that golf course. He's obviously playing pretty well at the moment. He got a second at Wells Fargo. So that trending that you were talking about, stroke average under 70. He's got a really nice...
I'll show you something there. You can see that.
Oh, you got him in.
Progressive form 10.0.
As soon as you said that, I'm like, Xander Schauffele for me is one. Form in majors is progressing nicely as well. He's had 10 top 10s. So basically nearly half of the majors he's played is top 10. And I like the fit around this Donald Ross course for Xander.
Yeah. And also, what's he had as well? 6 top 10s this season or something like that on the PGA Tour. Might be 7 now after Quail Hollow, which is quite a lot of good golf, isn't it? Without really sort of breaking through. Didn't do a great deal wrong either down the stretch when losing to Wyndham Clark last week. So that's a decent outside little, well, I say outside look. He's at 22.9 on Pinnacle, which that strikes me as being pretty decent value in light of everything that you just said, Sophie. That is a really good shout, actually.
Yeah. So he was, I should say, he's one of my main picks as well. I have that. I actually have the word trending under where I've written all the notes on him. And again, he's 10.0. He's top of the progressive form ratings basically. So he's the real guy coming into form right now. So and if you look at the stats as well, he's 6th in approach, 6th in tee to green. He's 17th in putting actually this year as well, which is putting was kind of a weakness for him. It was, a lot of people thought it was a strength, but it actually wasn't. But now 17th in strokes gained putting. For another key stat actually, it's first in approach from 150 to 175, which is again like the Masters is going to be a big stat this week. And he's 12th in 175 to 200 yards. 28 in scrambling, 32nd in strokes gained around the green, and 12th in bogey avoidance. So again, and just in terms of guys that are in form right now, and at the odds of nearly around 23, he's another great bet for me this week as well. So we agree on both Tony Finau and Xander Schauffele as being great bets so far.
Another thing to look at as well is the weather. You know, New York this time of year isn't always it's not pretty usually this time of year. It can, the storms can roll in. We had this at Augusta. It seems like every single major, barring the Open last year, that we seem to be talking about delays of some description, the course changing. You know, I think it was the USPGA last year, incidentally, where the golf course was quite firm until the Wednesday night, and then the heavens opened, and then all of a sudden the conditions completely changed, favoring some of those longer hitters. Is that something that we're going to be looking at again here this time round? How do you kind of view Oak Hill? Will that change? Will that become even more of a bomber's course if the weather starts to roll in, and obviously the delays as well? That's something to factor in, Sophie.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the weather, like Wednesday, it's sunny, but it's a high of 12 degrees, so that's freezing. And then you start getting a mixed batch of weather from Friday onwards. And that's where you do start looking at people that grew up in those types of weather. So here we are going, what about Finau and Xander? Well, they didn't, you know. So that's where people that grew up in the northwest of America, people that are used to those style of greens, you do get the You know, that Koepka's great down in Florida. You get the Californian boys like the Max Homers, good on the West Coast. You're just used to swinging in a few more layers, knowing that in the morning that 6 iron has to be a 5 iron. And there's that adaptation. I think it's okay weather, but like you say, stuff can roll in. And with the PGA used to being in August, now it's in May, we will get some of that variance. So it's probably worth looking at the weekend. That they're pretty good at getting the weather right within a few days, aren't they? Right now, we're not quite sure, but that's what leads me on to players that do well around those courses. And we're now starting to look at maybe a few more outsiders. And Keegan Bradley is a huge standout for that reason. Top 10 US Open in Boston last year. His record at the PGA is obviously good. I mean, he's won one, but he's only missed 2 cuts there in over a decade. So that's good in itself. And then Bryan was talking about this efficiency stat, which it popped up for me with Keegan Bradley. He's number 1 at driving efficiency. So that's
driving, he's
long and straight, that ball in play. So looking at, you know, is that, what is he? Well, when I looked at it, it was 102 on Pinnacle, and that's often to play. Do I think he can maybe get across the line? I don't know. Like, in all fairness, like, I'm not sure if he can quite get across the line. He has done in big events, so that is a good positive for him. He's won some big stuff like World Golf Championships, as we're talking about PGAs. I mean, he won that as a rookie. But I just like that efficiency off the tee, being from the Northwest. Bradley does elevate when he's got that home game, as people talk about. So he's my outsider for the PGA.
You know
what? I had sorry, go ahead.
No, just going back to the weather as well. When he's already a winner this season on the PGA Tour. The Zozo Championship was played in teeming down rain. So that's just another kind of thing to factor in. And actually, there are weather golfers, aren't there? I mean, you talk about players that don't respond well in the weather. People like Jason Day with his back issues. We talked about that before the Masters, didn't we? And, you know, golfers like that who literally can't swing the golf club. And that's no fault of their own. It's not a mentality thing. It's literally the whole body seizes up and they can't actually do it just because they're so injured and they require so much, you know, getting used to you know, those sorts of conditions. That's something to factor in. What we would say is we are recording this 6 days out from the USPGA, just to give as many of you as a chance to listen to this podcast as possible. So also just look out for the draw. If there is some weather around, look out for the draw, because there might be some names here that we're going, yeah, they're going to have a great week. But if they're in the wrong side of the draw, that can also be a factor as well. So we'll stop being meteorologists and we'll get back to being, you know, golf fans and aficionados. So Bryan, let's carry on with that.
I was just going to say about Keegan Bradley on the course he won on. It was Narashino, wasn't it, in the Zozo? But anyway, I had it down as that's a total driving course. I call it. Hideki won there. It was probably for the last 3 or 4, maybe not in the last year or 2, but the previous 5 years, he was probably number 1 on total driving, going back over the average of all those 5 years. And I kind of say it's very similar to Firestone, actually, which is exactly the same kind of course, long and straight, and then real high towering approaches. Is how you do get the job done on Firestone. So again, yeah, Keegan Bradley could be a very good shout. And for outsiders, for me, I was kind of thinking Tyrrell Hatton maybe.
I've got him.
Nice.
He's a bit of an enigma as Hatton, obviously, but again, trending progressive form, raising him from the model 9.33. He was third at the Wells Fargo there. Course fit, I have down it's 8.7, but I think there's a bit of a mentality I've plugged into that model, and he kind of rates a little, he drops a little bit for that. But then again, in majors, he probably has a different mentality, if you know what I mean. He's 65 odds-wise, which is, it's quite nice. Obviously, what we saw him do with the Players, he can go on birdie streaks on like tough courses, and I just think this, regardless of what the model says, I actually think the course fits him better. Like he's pretty good in the all-round department. His irons are great. He's streaky. He can get in there. Bogey avoidance, he'd be strong. So I was just looking at the odds. He was kind of a late one onto my radar, but I was just saying, yeah, around 66. I definitely give Hatton a go this week as well, or next week.
Definitely jump on that. You know, the great performance last week at the Wells Fargo, and you know, although not a similar golf course, still tough, and you got to drive it well. And actually didn't do a great deal wrong. It was just the putter that went a little cold, and that is an amazing set of odds. If he stays outside at 60s by the start of play next Thursday, I will be amazed. We need a few people to get on that whilst it's still you know, as long as it is. So right.
I just have a little quote here from Ernie Els, actually, and it just was about the Oak Hill course itself. He says it's the best, fairest, and toughest championship course that he's ever played. So if a guy like that is saying that, you know, it's kind of a grinders kind of course, and Tyrrell Hatton again fits that kind of bill. So yeah, I'll go with definitely on with Tyrrell.
There's plenty of players who fit that mold, isn't there? The grinders theme. What we don't have is that sense of tradition, that sense of, oh, I love this tournament, you know, with the USPGA. I know that there will be players who think that. Of course, there will be the likes of Justin Thomas, who we're going to try and come on to. He's obviously won it twice. It's his only two major victories this USPGA Championship, coming at different golf courses, obviously. He's starting to show some good stuff, Justin Thomas, but for, you could say, 2 or 3 seasons now, he's not quite had that zip, has he? That same zip that we saw in 2015, 2016, where he was winning 5-6 times a season for a couple of years and got to the world #1 spot. But he is the defending champion. He loves this tournament, and he is trending slightly in the right direction. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this, because I'm not sure that we're getting a great deal of value with Justin Thomas here on Pinnacle. 21.79, which is 4th favorite, essentially, as we record this. So, but the thing is, I say it's not good value. It's good value if he then goes and wins it, isn't it? So where do we stand on a JT? We should always talk about the defending champion of any tournament, but he's an interesting one, isn't he, for this? Bryan, how does your model see JT?
Yeah, so it's like Thomas is like, I had him in the Players' Championship. I actually had him favoured ahead of the 3 big boys, and that was to do with course fit. And he really was trending. I really fancied him strongly for that. But so I actually was following him on the red button actually during that tournament, and I could see where he was letting himself down. It was his shorter approaches, his wedges. He was missing greens all over the place with his wedges, and I think he came to said that, and he'd been working on his approach play, but that's what's kind of letting him down this season. So I took a few kind of stats. Well, if you just even look at his recent form: 10th at the Valspar, 25th at the Heritage, 14th last week in Wells Fargo. That when he won that at Wells Fargo, there was a few renovations. It used to be kind of more a draw bias kind of course, but they made a few alterations to a few holes and turned them the other way. And that's when the likes of Hideki and Thomas started actually firing there, and that's when Thomas got over the line. But yeah, I don't know. Ever since I was watching him at the Players and what he said himself, and then seeing him at the Masters as well, I don't know. I just like you said there. I'm not sure. 21.79 is great value for Thomas. And again, like Sophie was saying with Rory last time out the Masters or whatever, there'll be pressure on Thomas obviously because he's the defending champion, and he'll have a lot of interviews and stuff to do. So I might give Thomas a swear this week for me. Anyway, I don't know what Sophie thinks on that one.
Yeah, I'm a big JT fan, and when I started writing with Pinnacle, he was always in my bet on just. In fact, we picked him last year to win the PGA, but really since he did win the PGA, yet you were saying about his approach play, but also his putting. Like I'm looking at his stats here, about half the events he has played since winning, he has lost on the greens. So he's lost strokes gained. There's no even little gain there. That is quite a lot to put on yourself. We've seen him change a few putters here and there. I think he's gone to 8 point now even. So he is trying to find something. So and I like it when players acknowledge that. Rory did it with his wedge play. Next thing you know, wow. So I would maybe hold off on JT from the PGA, but then look towards the next couple of majors, because these big boys, they get it right eventually. You know, they're not shy about putting a bit of graft in, and Justin Thomas is certainly one of those. But for now, I think I need to see a little bit more form from him while he's analysing his game. So maybe look to more US Open for Justin Thomas, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm always kind of wary as well if people are chopping and changing and with the putter, and you know that there's a problem there, and if they're not confident on the greens, you're at a bit of a disadvantage, especially against all these big boys in the majors, you know. So, yeah, not for me this week, but who knows? You could obviously come through and do it again.
Right, we're going to nail some picks. I think now we're going to sort of nail our colours to the mask a little bit. So I think what we're looking for is a favourite, somebody who you might not necessarily want to back, but you do foresee eventually getting the W. A bit like we did it with the Masters, where we basically went round and whoever hadn't chosen somebody from the top three, you ended up with that. That was quite an interesting way to do a pick. I then want a kind of an outsider and then a total rank outsider as well. So I'll tell you what, whilst you guys are both thinking of that, because I know that's a bit of a thing to kind of put you on the spot with, I'll give you mine. So favorite, I'm going to go Jon Rahm. I know that Sophie doesn't reckon that he can kind of go back to back, but I think he's kind of had enough water under the bridge. I think that loss to Tony Finau, toe to toe down the stretch at Vedanta the other week, may have just reignited a bit of that kind of fire in the belly from Jon Rahm. He's also the favourite with Pinnacle, so come on. I know that's not a very imaginative pick. If we're looking as kind of a little bit of an outsider, somebody that we've not talked about actually, but has also been quiet since his win at the Open back in 2021 at St. George's, Colin Morikawa, not even won a PGA Tour event since then, put himself in a couple of decent positions, always a really solid driver of the golf ball. And my real rank outsider, who is outside 250 with Pinnacle, is Davis Riley, who is a former, ex sort of college teammate, sort of, but didn't actually play college golf, of Justin Thomas's, from Louisiana. He is a proper swinger of the golf club and got his first PGA Tour victory, albeit in a team format, a couple of weeks ago at the Zurich Classic of New Orleans, and quite exciting as well. So Davis Riley's my outside bet. So there we go. There's my top three, quick fire, just like that. And hopefully by now, by me padding, I've given you guys enough time to do something similar. Who's going to take us away? Brian, let's go for it.
Gosh. Well, really the favourites, I can't split Scheffler and Rahm, so you could touch them, and and that means just split the money up on the two of them, and you're going to get the same return if either of them wins, if you do it right with the calculation. And then, but there's one just kind of outside them who actually could infiltrate them in favoritism, really, and that's, we haven't mentioned him yet, it's Patrick Cantlay, who I have always rated very highly, and I thought he's going to be number one in the world at some stage, and maybe for a long time, I would say. So I had some stats on him: 9.8 in the progressive form, so he's second in total driving. I think total driving is absolutely huge this week, and that's an improvement for him in the drive. He was always kind of sneaky long, but he wasn't that accurate, but now he's going to change. Second in total driving is huge. Third in ball striking, ninth in bogey avoidance. He's a little bit less in approach, 42nd, but his stats in other years are much higher than that. He's 16th in strokes gained, but he doesn't really have a weakness. Like he's 18th in driving accuracy as well. Just if you take that on its own this year, which is, it's not normal for him, so that's probably why he's up there in the total driving department. And just his recent finishes, even so, third at the RBC Heritage, 21st last week, just kind of a warm up, and 14th at the Masters again, where he could have been higher. And again, I think I said during the Masters with Cantlay, I just think he struggles with the scrambling, where he doesn't usually, but he struggles to get up and down on Augusta. But then again, everybody does. So I just think Cantlay, and if you look at his odds, then he's I don't have his odds written down there actually.
So look, Patrick Cantlay, he's near the top of the standings on Pinnacle.com. We'll find him and say, he's at 22, so just behind Brooks Koepka.
Exactly. So yeah, he's another great bet for me. He's probably again, with Xander Schauffele and Finau and Cantlay are probably my 3 best bets for the week. And then if you want to look sort of, I mentioned Hatton as a good outsider already, but maybe if you talk on one of the live guys, so Taylor Gooch is a guy that doesn't get any kind of mention at all. Ever.
Sophie's laughing. I think a lot of these are Sophie's picks are like going up in smoke here. You can't pick the same one, Sophie, by the way.
No, you can't. You can just add more fuel to the fire. Why not?
Absolutely.
And then, so Taylor Gooch, he's 66.84 in Pinnacle. He's won the last 2 live events now. One was I wasn't watching them. I haven't seen much live action from the live events, but he was first in Adelaide, I just presume. There's probably some wind over there, and he might be expecting that this week. But just watching Gooch when he's playing on the PGA Tour, he's quite a shot shaper. So he can fly it high, low, left to right, right to left, which I think might come in handy this week. He's great in the short game department. He's all his stats are kind of strong on and around the greens. He won the RSM Classic, which is a windy event then again usually. And I have kind of in asterisks here, he's streaky. So he's one, as he's shown now on the live tour, and I just think he's going to bring that form over here this or next week. And he could definitely be one to watch out for as an outsider, I think.
Okay. Nice one. Sophie, you were grinning all the way through that because I think Brian was kind of nicking a few of yours, which is fine.
I wanted to jump in first.
It's kind of what the name of the game is.
Yeah, it is. So I'll try and Cantlay was one of mine, definitely, to have a little sneak at looking at along the same kind of category for me as Xander Schauffele. So I'm going to go Scotty Scheffler as my first pick. Then I'm going Xander Schauffele, and Keegan Bradley was my little outsider. Another guy to look at because the odds are amazing, really. Adrian Meronk, he just won last week on the DP World Tour, and he had a nice little performance at the Masters, for his debut. I think he is a guy that I expect more of him, and he's done well on the big occasion, trending nicely. More for his odds. Like if I'm looking at his odds, he's in and around like a Brandon Grace at the moment. And at Kurt Kitayama, who obviously had that really good result, but form's dropped. Whereas Meronk's trending, a little bit of a free hit for him. So somebody that does, has a good short game for a big man, and obviously hits it a long way and keeps it. He's not losing. In terms of hitting the fairway, he's average, which is good considering how far he hits it. So that would be my rank outsider with a Keegan Bradley. But in terms of live, I think you're right with the Taylor Gooch there. It's the unknown, isn't it? Somebody from live will do well this week. We saw that at the Masters, and that would be my hot take really from that. Finau's odds are exceptional for me. Like. For where he is in the game right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Scotty Scheffler is going to win. Telling you now.
Scotty Scheffler's going to win, Sophie. Okay. I mean, his stats, going right to the start of the podcast, do point that way, don't they? So that's...
No, you can never say that. I'm just like... I think the Masters, for me, it was one of those 3, right? Because we know the course, there's only 80-odd people playing. USGA, huge field. This is the strongest field in major golf. And with the course being more of an unknown, it does open it up to players.
Certainly. And Taylor Gooch, by the way, for those interested and rubbing their hands together, 66.8, which for a guy who has won at a canter back-to-back tournaments on that live golf circuit, whatever you think of it, he has still had to beat some quality and was miles and miles ahead, posting some good scores on actually a couple of really decent golf courses. So,
and he's a good wind player too, as well, if the wind does get up next week. So
correct.
Add that into the mix as well.
Something to think about, and I think at those odds, it's definitely worth a look. You look at somebody like Dustin Johnson, who would have, you'd have said 3-4 years ago, would have been suiting this sort of tournament absolutely down to a T, but we just don't know, do we? He's at half those odds at just over 33. On Pinnacle.com as we speak. So you'd probably say out of the live golfers, if you're going to go for anybody with a bit of value, Taylor Gooch is the one. So there we go. Anything else to add before we get going? Any other little nuggets?
Quick correction: Ronk didn't do great at the Masters. He did well at the Honda. So, and of course, which you have to hit it well off the tee. But no, I think we're good this week. I'm quite looking forward to seeing, for me, a new golf course on the. I didn't really pay too much attention to 2013 because I've probably been playing a little bit on tour. So good to get them all back. Love major season, and another American probably going to win, aren't they? Which is fine.
Well, it's all right if it's female shuffling, can't they?
Yeah,
Or Gucci.
it's always a bit like, oh, why aren't we picking any Europeans? Because the Americans are a standout at this major in particular.
Well, Hatton, we take Hatton. Hatton will do nicely, I suppose.
I think Brian knows exactly who he's hoping to win here. Yeah, especially at those odds on Pinnacle.
I'm hoping for them all to finish in the top 10. Obviously not going to happen.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? That's just the name of the game. That's what we do on Major Talk. Try and pick the best value for you guys listening at home as possible. Look, we're back for the next major, which is at LA Country Club, the US Open. Not too long, actually, between these two majors, as is traditional, and there'll be plenty of talking points there. That's a new golf course, though. So we're going into the unknown a little bit in terms of the year's third major. But I do enjoy the second men's major of the season. Sophie Walker, former Ladies European Tour player, current Sky Sports analyst, and Bryan Nicholson joining me here on the Major Talk podcast as ever, who is an author of the Betting Blueprint book. Right, okay, we'll be back next time. All the odds were correct at the time of recording, and do remember to check out both Sophie and Brian's articles on the betting resources page on pinnacle.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.